What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Bumpy Road to $10 million. If you're in your 20s or 30s and are thinking about how to grow your money in the stock market, this series is for you. As a reminder, this video is not financial advice. You should always do your own research before investing. Now, if you haven't seen the first 3 videos of this series, I would highly encourage you to do so. This video will likely not make sense in isolation. And if you found these videos helpful so far, please hit like and subscribe below. So let's jump into it. As we discussed last time, after buying the ETFs UPRO and SPXL, we'll have $145 left over. The next securities we want to buy to complete and protect our portfolio on day one are put options. Now, while I'm going to share with you how I would go about buying put options for this portfolio, it's important for you to know that I am absolutely not an expert when it comes to options. I only use them as insurance to hedge worst-case scenario outcomes. I'm sure many of you may know a lot more about options than I do, and maybe you have your own views on how to use options in this portfolio more effectively by doing deep dive analysis of implied volatilities, the Greeks, dynamic hedging, and so on. However, for our strategy, the only purpose of the options is to ensure we are protected if the levered ETF stock prices completely tank. Now, a quick refresher from video 3. Buying put options are trickier than buying ETFs because, for example, you not only need to buy a UPRO put option, but also need to select the strike price of the option as well as the time to maturity. There are many UPRO put options outstanding that you can buy at any given time with different strike prices and times to maturity. For our purposes, we only need to select one. So which one should we buy? As a rule of thumb, for our strategy, I buy put options that are around 75% out of the money and with a time to expiration of around 1 year. What does that mean? So the time to maturity part should be self-explanatory. In our example, we start investing in the strategy on December 31st, 2025. So we will buy put options that expire in about a year. So sometime around December 2026 or January 2027. Second component, by 75% out of the money, we are talking about the strike price. If, for example, the UPRO's stock price is $100, then I would buy a put option on UPRO with a strike price of around $25, as that is 75% lower than the stock price. Or in finance terms, we say 75% out of the money. Now, in our example from the last video, the UPRO stock price was $95, and if I check on the day I'm recording this video, UPRO is actually trading pretty close to $95. Meaning, we will look to buy a put option with a strike price of around $25. That's a rounded number. So if we log on to our brokerage platform, for example, Charles Schwab or Interactive Brokers, and look for a UPRO put option with a strike price of $25 and around 1 year to maturity, I can see that the cost for me to buy this is around $1.60. This is the average of the bid and ask prices, and we'll discuss what these mean later, but for today's purposes, we assume $1.60 is the price we need to pay to buy one put option contract. Also, as we discussed last time, given one put option contract is for 100 shares, this put option will actually cost me $160 on day one, which is $1.6 times 100. Now, let's go back and look at this from an overall portfolio perspective. The price of $160 for one put option contract on UPRO results in 2 problems. First, in our example from earlier, I only have $145 to spend on put options for both UPRO and SPXL. Here, it would cost me $160 to just buy UPRO put options, never mind SPXL. Second problem is even if I had $160 to spend on put options, in our example, I would have spent $855 on ETFs and $160 on put options. So around 16% of my portfolio would be in put options, which is crazy. Why is it crazy to have 16% of the portfolio in put options? Let's go back to our example from last week's video, where we showed how we structure the portfolio to achieve a 2.7 times multiple over the S&P 500. If my initial allocation changes from 98 and 2% to the levered ETFs and put options respectively to 84 and 16%, the expected portfolio multiple over the S&P 500 is down to just 1 times from 2.75 times previously. This would defeat the purpose of our strategy entirely. So guys, this doesn't really work, and we clearly have an allocation problem on day one. What should we do in this situation? There are a couple of different ways to approach it. Let's start with the practical solution. And this is what I would do if I could truly only afford to invest $1,000 on day one. Now, on day one, the portfolio value is $1,000. As a reminder, in 24 years, if things go exactly as expected, the portfolio value should be over $10 million. And so on day one, the portfolio value is really a rounding error compared to what we will hope it will grow into. Another way of illustrating this point, let's envision an extreme downside scenario where I invest $1,000 in this strategy on day one without any put options, and on day two, UPRO and SPXL both go to zero. I've lost $1,000, but given it's a relatively small amount and very early on, I don't really mind. So what I would do is just not buy any put options on day one and invest the entire initial amount in UPRO and SPXL. I would then wait for about a year to buy put options when the portfolio value is around $10,000, because at $10,000, I would have a material amount to lose in an extreme downside scenario. So that is one way we can proceed. The other solution is also quite practical, but not necessarily affordable for everyone. And we alluded to it towards the end of the last video. This is to just construct the portfolio on day one with a much higher amount. Let's call it $10,000. As a side note, if you did start with $10,000 instead of $1,000, and all of our other assumptions remain the same, you would get to over $10 million a year earlier in our strategy. To walk you through this, let's go to our earlier example and change the initial capital investment to $10,000. With this amount of initial capital, you would buy 51 shares of UPRO and 25 shares of SPXL. So you would have spent just under $9,600 on the ETFs and will have $405 left over to buy put options with. Now, as we said earlier, a UPRO put option with around 1 year to expiration and out of the money will cost $160. Similarly, I looked up of the money SPXL put option with around 1 year to expiration, and it will cost slightly more at $200. So we would end up buying one UPRO and one SPXL put option contract each, and we would have spent $360 on put options to complete the initial investment. So to summarize, guys, in the scenario where we have up to $10,000 to invest on day one, we have invested a total of $9,955. And to break this out, we have invested just under $9,600 in the ETFs, which amounts to 96.4% of the portfolio, and $360 on put options, which amounts to 3.6% of the portfolio. This, of course, is not the optimal 98 and 2% allocation, but it's close enough. As we've said before, things will rarely work out perfectly, and that is okay, but we should make sure they are as close to optimal as possible. So guys, in this video, we went through two scenarios to essentially show that the most practical time to buy put options is when the total portfolio value is around $10,000. In scenario 1, it will take around a year to get to 10,000 as we make our initial investment and then allocate another $1,000 every 2 months. In scenario 2, we increase the day 1 allocation to $10,000, if we can afford it of course, and buy put options right away. Now moving forward, to make things efficient, the way we will proceed at the beginning of next video is with the assumption that our portfolio value is at $10,000. Like I said, this can happen on day 1 or take about a year. And the reason we're proceeding with this assumption is the next thing I want to do is show you the true value of having put options in the portfolio. Specifically, we'll see what mathematically happens to the portfolio in the worst case scenario when both UPRO and SPXL drop to 0 overnight, but you have the put options in place. So if this was interesting and helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.